So we're ready to mix our sourdough bread. I have 500 grams of flour. I've also converted this to just cup measurements because I've had it before where my scale broke and then I was stuck. So I do know that's approximately 3.5 cups of flour. I like to add a little bit of whole wheat. So I have 1 cup of whole wheat and 2.5 cups of white flour. So that's my 500 grams of flour. And I have 375 grams of water. Once again, this was boiled and it's cooled down, but it was boiled to get the chlorine out. So I have 1 2/3 of a cup of water. And this is just nice and warm, it's not over hot. And I have a teaspoon of salt. And I have 125 grams of my starter, which is approximately 2/3 of a cup. That's going to vary depending on how much air is in your starter, but I found almost every time it's about 2/3 of a cup. So that's from my starter, which is active. And that also left me with my starter to put back in the fridge. There's only about 3/4 of an inch on the bottom of my jar. This is going to go back in the fridge for another day when I'm going to make more sourdough. So that's my starter off to the side, but we're going to mix up our dough. It's quite a messy thing to do. You'll want to do it by hand. I'm just going to get it started here with my spoon. And then you're going to get your hand in there and get mixing it. So it's going to be it's a very soft dough, soft and it's a very wet dough. I'd say this is about 75% hydration. So we're going to just get this mixing. So I'm going to just mix this up a little bit, probably for a minute or two till it comes together. I'll just stop the video because otherwise it just takes a little bit too long to just watch this. But I'll show you what this looks like in about 1 to 2 minutes. All right, it's been about a minute, maybe 2 minutes here, and I still got a lot of dough in my hand. Rather than adding more flour, which actually makes your dough drier and heavier, I dip my hand in water and then I use that to keep mixing up my dough. You want to get to the point where everything is nicely combined and that there's no flour left on the bottom of your pot. So you just work at that a little bit. And it's better doing this by hand. You can do it by machine, but by hand you can really feel your dough and what it feels like. It's still a very sticky dough and it's still going to stick to your hands, but we are starting to all come together now. If I look at the bottom of my bowl, I don't have flour on the bottom. So this is good. I'm just going to get my hands wet one more time. Just going to stretch it out a little bit. You're going to let this rest because we're going to need the gluten to start to work. So we're not over mixing to start off with. We're just getting our dough all wet and everything combined, and then we're going to leave this for 30 minutes before we do our next step. So make sure you cover this up so you can see how wet and ragged the dough looks. That's perfect. But it's also a little bit of a solid consistency. It's not too soft. So this feels really good. And we're going to cover this up. I just use these little shower caps that I find at the dollar store to cover that up so that it doesn't get all air in there, so you don't want that to dry out. So we're going to let this sit for 30 minutes before we do the next step because there's going to be some stretch and folds that we're going to do. So for the next 2 hours you have to be around to deal with your bread. So we're going to do a 30-minute stretch and fold, wait 30 minutes, we're going to do that 4 times. So 30 minutes, if you want, you can keep this in a warm place again on your hot water bottle if it's cool in the house and cover that up. It just helps everything just stay nice and warm and for things to keep rising as we're working with that. So we're going to come back in 30 minutes.